I'm taking
is that you can fall into positions where you find it, where you find the answer. And I
the
sort of
name of it
feel
is
like that's the
penicillin.
situation that the
I
deep
have a cold. I'm
plant
taking penicillin, which is very
psychedelic
strong.
community
It makes me want
is
to like lay
in.
down and sleep.
It's a sense of having
But I'm also
found
smoking
the
so that I can
answer.
clean the
And
room out
now the
of all the little
task
cat poos
changes. It's a
before I
completely
fall asleep.
different kind of
So
spiritual
hang with me
universe that
as
you
I do
live
this.
in after you've found the
The
answer.
penicillin, of course, is
Because
followed up with a
the
small
task
amount of
becomes
paracetamol and
facing the answer,
uh,
facing more
ibuprofen and
habits and more about discipline and passions and
nose
will.
spray
No, it's now
and
handed over. And so what are you going to do with it? And
little
this is, to
candy.
my mind, in a way,
So enjoy
the problem
as I clean
and the
the room
challenge that we face globally
and
as a species. You know, the holy
so clean the
grail
room
of the Western mind was the ability to
and try to
release
survive
energy
doing it.
and form matter and control nature. Then this is now achieved. The goal. So now the whole context of the problem changes. And the problem
I had
becomes
Mauricio take all the
changing
babies
our own
downstairs
minds,
to check on the sun.
controlling the hand that controls the body. And this is an
Because in order to
entirely
clean my
different
room, I can't
kind
have the
of
babies here.
problem. It is not to be solved with the analytical
In order
knife
to
plunged
finance Pussy
again and
Paradise, I
again
gotta
into
go
the
to the
body of
States.
nature. That whole
That's a fact.
approach is
Ramira,
seen to
Perro,
be
Milei, AMLO are going to be
at best
devastated, and I
passe,
feel
at
terrible
worst
about it,
bankrupt.
and I'm not happy about it,
So
but it's
instead,
necessary.
it's about trying to
Sometimes we
edge
do what is
up
necessary, not what
close to
is
nature
desireful.
and feeling as
Fortunately.
individuals and as a society very peculiar about this. You know, it's like going back to your rape victim and pleading for their forgiveness. And yet, as I've tried to make sense of these psychedelic experiences, first in a general way, saying, what are these molecules for? Or is that a proper question to ask? What are they doing for the plant? What are they doing for me? As I've tried to come to terms with what this might all be about, I've come more and more back to the notion that esta es la razón por la que he cancelado mi suscripción a la cámara del Tigre.
Esta nueva mini cámara Wi-Fi sin suscripción ofrece más.
It all lies in the plant. That our continual restlessness, which in modern circumstances has evolved into a rapacious appetite for addictive substances of all sorts, our peculiar inappropriateness in all contexts. So we are not quite simply complex mammals. We are certainly not angels. And we just seem to occupy a very uncomfortable place in the hierarchy of creation. I think this has to do with the fact that we are the traumatized inheritors of a dysfunctional relationship, a relationship that grew dysfunctional in the last 15 to 25,000 years. And what we call history is the fall out of a dynamic here and now feeling-toned relationship with our environment and into this anticipation of the future, worry about the past, basically ego. And I recently spoke in New York, and New York is a very nuts and bolts kind of town. And people there took issue with the notion that all of our problems can be boiled down to a single problem. If you trace the thread of every screw-up back into the maze, it all comes back to a single issue, which is excess of ego. We all have excess of ego, and our entire situation, legalistic, psychological, theological, religious, everything is about this. But it doesn't work. It's maladaptive, and yet we have it. And why do we have it? If it's maladaptive, if it doesn't promote human values, then how in the hell did it get started, and what is it that's maintaining and sustaining it? Well, this is what I want to talk about over the course of the weekend. When I pushed the analysis of what the psychedelic experience meant to the limits, I was surprised to discover that it left the domain of my personal relationship to the mystery. What is it? What does it want from me? What is it trying? All that had to also make room for another issue, which is there's a political issue here. I think most people in this room, most people who've had the psychedelic experience will agree that the most profound, the most open-hearted, the most moving moments of their lives, some of them have been tied in with those experiences. But we seem unable or unwilling or afraid to extrapolate that conclusion to the notion that this is a general panacea for society, because we cannot conceive that the solution to a spiritual dilemma could lie in matter. In other words, we ourselves have been infected by the inside-outside matter-spirit dichotomies of the dominator culture. But the notion that man, notice the gender thrust here, the notion that man could somehow bootstrap himself to Godhead without reference to nature seems to me highly peculiar, and simply nothing more than an expression of hubris, pride, a belief, that we can do it our way and alone. So all of this is very
Really fast, accurate transcriptions. Introducing Crypto.ai, the world's best AI transcription service. Crypto.ai transcribes your audio and video files with up to 99% accuracy across more than 99 languages. Just upload your file, drop in a YouTube link, or recording the audio. Have multiple speakers? Crypto.ai speaker identification feature effortlessly distinguishes between voices. Crypto.ai is designed for everyone. Visit www.crypto.com and start transcribing today.
Nos preguntamos hace milenios qué es la vida. ¿No es lo que todos queremos saber? ¿Qué es la vida? ¿Qué es la conciencia?
¿Cómo estamos conscientes de que estamos conscientes? ¿Qué queda si el ego o el yo se disuelven por completo? La conciencia, ante todo, es una experiencia.
Hay mucha gente que cree que solo el humano piensa. Para el mundo indígena no es así. Que bien, todo, a esencia igual que todo. Vemos el mundo como algo separado de nosotros. Vemos cosas, no seres.
Así que la gran pregunta es, ¿cómo se convierten las aguas del cerebro en el vino de nuestra experiencia consciente? La meditación es el curso invalidado para comprender la naturaleza de la mente, y la psilocibina es el curso intensivo. Se sentía como el latido del corazón de la realidad misma. La pregunta es, ¿cuánta realidad puedes tolerar?
shelf life is short on all of these issues because the planet is in a state of terminal crisis. Does that have anything to do with the psychedelic experience, or are these separate issues? How can they be separate issues if the psychedelic experience is a mirror of the state of the individual and collective psyche, and if the planet is on a collision course with some kind of terminal crisis? It seems to me it's too late. You don't have the engineering skills, you don't have the you don't have the resource extraction ability. It's all slipped through your fingers. Well, I think psychedelics are capitalists to think, to imagine, to understand them. And we are like somebody who has been around when the house is burning down around us. And now we have awakened to the sound of falling timbers and the smell of smoke. And we have a certain limited amount of time to figure this situation out. We don't have 500 years or 100 years. Anybody who speaks in terms of solutions that require 100 years or even 50 years to implement doesn't understand the dynamics of the situation. History has some kind of will for its own transcendence. And I think we are now so close to the dropping of the mask and the realization of what the game was all along, that the sense, this nearby revelation, informs all of our lives. I mean, drives our dreams, our thoughts, the choices we make, why we're here in this room this evening. It's very big news. The world is not at all as we suppose it to be. I find that very amazing. I mean, that's the bottom line for me. I always think of these things in reference to that scene in 2001 when the anthropoid apes are leaping up and down and screaming and pointing at the monolith. That's what we're doing here in this room. And the subject of this weekend is unspeakable.
How to give an English class with that
It can
smell.
only be obliquely
And you'll see what I'm talking about.
indicated. Whatever you say about it is not true. And yet it is somehow the informing mystery of being, and it is not remote. That's the big one.
Rakshasas indeed, my
The
friends.
previous human model, which is that we are all poor, groveling sinners, and that gnosis will trickle down to us from the wonderful folks
Led by the
above
queen of all Rakshasas,
nearby,
Ramira Kaksvarch,
business
also known as Tiamat,
stargazing
mother of all cats.
is
Keep-
insufficient and insulting, considering the situation we have been brought to by those very stargazing men wearing dresses. So I think what we have to do now is just take the machinery into our own hands. It's a matter of personal responsibility to find out what the world is really.
Presentamos Voico Image, la aplicación inteligente de entrenamiento de la voz basada en la IA. Una voz profunda, una voz segura, una voz fuerte, una voz sexy. Puedes construir la voz que desees. Tu carrera, tus relaciones, la crianza de tus hijos,
yeah.
tu voz
Tell it to
afecta a todas las áreas de tu vida. Voico Image.
What it is. What do you think's going on? What do you think this is all about? Who do you think you are? What do you think English is? How do you really cognize notions like the future, the past, where I've been, what I want? Moby Dick, Melville says if you would strike through the mask, everything is a mask. And just
where's the
behind
mask?
that mask,
Who arrests these men?
well, what? That's the question. I mean, it's the thing which informs every individual existence, and that's fine, and people have always lived in the shadow of that mystery. But it is our weird privilege to live in an age where there is also to be a collective dropping discussing this,
How to
convincing
decarbonate.
ourselves of it, and then working out the minute details of how it all is inevitable and couldn't be any other way, is how we will occupy ourselves this weekend. I'm really conflicted always in these situations because I feel, for some reason, I suppose it's an ego trip, that I'm not
Chemistry.
correctly perceived, I as a person, correctly perceived, and I think of myself as a reasonable person, a person sensitive to concepts like evidence, causality, so forth and so on, and yet what I have to say is like completely unreasonable. I mean, a messenger was a complete madness approaching from all directions. So, and I got into that position by staying pretty close to the principle of skepticism. I'm not a believer. In fact, when the aliens draped the mantle over my shoulders, they said, it's because you don't believe in it.
Catch it?
Now, this is why you get that's why you got this far, because you didn't believe in anything. And it's a good method. Normally, it's a method spawned out of futility. You say, well, fuck it, I don't believe in anything. But it's also very good for getting rid of a lot of crap, because the real stuff can take the test of skepticism. The real stuff doesn't have to be bowed down before, and it works. It's on its own. The news is, and it's very hard news to get out because it's news about the structure of reality. The news is coming back from 50, 60, 100 years of anthropologists, ethnographers, geographers, botanists, dealing with the most quote-unquote primitive people in the most remote parts of the world. The news is that reality is not at all as we imagined it to be. And our prowess in the technical sciences is simply a cultural artifact, an accomplishment of ours. Some people do great tattoos. We send spacecraft to the stars. But it doesn't mean we understand anymore. And in fact, the evidence is building that our style of society is the historical equivalent of a temper tantrum. That it has no viability. It's completely self-limiting. It's destructive. And it hands nothing on to its receivers. So, I sort of talk to this group, and all the groups that I talk to, from 2 points of view. I'm trying to convince you of something, and yet reason dictates that I assume that you're already convinced, pretty much. So then it's also an effort to figure out what it is we're so convinced of, and then what is so great about it. Because I think some kind of this is a real mystery, the only one I know. This is the thing that you hope exists and assume doesn't if you're a reasonable person. Because it's that, all the dreams of childhood, all the sense of magic and the dissolvability and transcendability of boundaries is returned.
This AI tool will create a stunning ebook direct from your content, whether it's a Microsoft Word document or a Google document, or even if you just have an idea, it will create the whole ebook for you, complete with the graphics, with the images, the fonts, the layout. So within a few minutes, you end up with a stunning ebook that's ready to publish. Watch this. First, let's create the content. So in Designer, I create a new ebook, and I'm going to do it as a PDF. I can import from lots of different types of content. For now, I'm going to use WordGenie, our AI content creator. So what I need to do do is give it an idea. So I'm going to say confidence and then select a sub-niche. I'm going to target this towards entrepreneurs and choose a title. It comes back with the outline, which I can customize and add or remove chapters, sections. And then within a few moments, it comes back with the full ebook, which I can customize and rewrite as I see fit. So let's move on to the next step. Now we're going to choose a template. There's hundreds to choose from, all different styles and niches. But for now, I'm going to look at this one. It's called Playful Vibes. It's quite vibrant. Let's give it a go. So now we're in step 3, where I can customize my ebook. I can change any content, and it's combined the template with my raw content there. So all I need to do really is just go through, check everything off, switch out images for the different ones from the image library. There's over 1 million images to choose from. And as I keep doing that, just repeat that throughout the whole ebook, and I'm pretty much ready to go. So all I need to do then is to scroll down and click on Publish, and there is my final ebook all ready to go. Now, when you join Designer, you're joining 350,000 customers across 70 different countries. We've been around since 2016. We're clearly the world's leading ebook designer. We've got awards from Capterra, from Trustpilot, from G2, and Software Advice. So all you need to do is click on the Learn More button below this video. Get started and get your ebook completed by the end of the day.
Shit, let me catch it. But 2 joules is not bad.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But getting in the zone and staying there, that feels more like luck than control. So that's why we made Brain FM. It's like a do not disturb setting for your mind. And it gets you focused in just 5 minutes. Using science and sound, Brain FM guides your brainwaves into an optimal state for productivity called neural phase locking, which lets different parts of your brain work together more easily. Compared to average music, Brain FM actually increases and sustains your focus over time, letting you stay in the zone for as long as you want. You can also use Brain FM for relaxation, meditation, and even sleep. But don't take our word for it. Join millions of others and try it yourself for free, and see what you get done with Brain FM.
is affirmed in this experience. Well, yet here we are having this on the brink of a planetary meltdown of culture and ecosystem. So is this just some kind of dancing on the brink, some kind of ultimate self-indulgence? Does it feed back into the central moral problem of the age, which is what is to be done? What are we to do? How can we be effective, whatever that means? Is there a discernible role for each of us to play in the metamorphosis and near death of the planet that we are now experiencing? Or are we simply to witness it? Well, I don't think there's any point in thinking about these kinds of questions unless you draw back to the big picture, to first premises. A good example of what I mean is, suppose we save the rainforests and stabilize the population and so forth and so on, and then 50 years down the line, the sun explodes. It means we didn't get it. We were not reading correctly the message nature was trying to hand to us. And so we did the wrong thing and are going to be blown out of the water for such churlishness. So what's important is to figure out what is going on before you start pushing in the process. And
What is going on?
I don't think you can do it from within a culture. In other words, if you're a person of decent intent and moderate intelligence, and you read the great minds of your culture and study their thought, it's insufficient because everybody is bound within an illusion of language The entire enterprise of culture is this illusion of language. Homer was as sick with it as Heidegger. So there's no going back or getting no classic recension. What we have to do is reach past to some kind of experience. It must be anchored in an experience. But there is this thing about being human, which we as a culture have ignored, repressed, don't want to talk about, face, or think about, which is you can get loaded. And nobody knows quite what to make of this. We dance around it with the same kind of furious, ambiguous intensity that we also reserve for sex, which is also a boundary dissolving, momentary loss of self into some kind of greater whole. And it also just drives us into a frenzy, and we establish boundaries, we have hierarchies, we push it this way and that. It just drives us up the wall. You know, whoever she was who designed this system had the good sense to connect this whole sexual impulse very tightly into the generative process, so that there's no way you can get sex out of the human experience. I mean, people have tried in all times and places in many strange ways. 150 years ago, they were putting pants on pianos because it was thought that young men would not see pianos unclothed because it might excite them to impure thoughts. Well, this is real. In England, in our culture, not New Guinea or the moon, but in England, pianos wore pants. But the psychedelic option is sort of like an appendix. You know, you can have it, but you don't need it, apparently. Apparently. That's the key thing. In other words, whether or not you have the psychedelic experience does not stand between you and the ability to pass on your genes into time. It does not stand between you and continued existence, like the autonomic reflex of breathing. It's a kind of potential loop in development, which we can, as culturally coordinated creatures, choose to follow or choose not to follow. But this development is very recent. Until, pick a number, 10,000 years ago, the onset of puberty, which was, you know, a wave of hormonal release, basically, the onset of puberty was the signal to the social mechanisms of the people to begin the administration of psychedelic plants, to carry people into adulthood, to carry them into a feeling-toned relationship with the mythological material that they had learned as children, but that they now would be expected to exemplify as realized adults within the realm or sphere of culture or whatever it is that they are. We, in our anxiety about all this, and I'll talk about why I'm sure it will come out, but for the present, just to say, we have interfered with this, and we have enforced upon ourselves a kind of infantilism. Now, this is a phenomenon that's well known. It's called neoteny. Neoteny is the preservation of adult characteristics into adulthood. Childhood characteristics or infantile characteristics, or even fetal characteristics. So, for instance, all primate fetuses are hairless, but only the human being retains this fetal characteristic throughout life. The very large head of the human infant, the percentage relationship to body mass remains very much in the fetal end of the statistics throughout life for human beings. We have large heads. The very prolonged period in which skills, cultural skills, are acquired, up to 16 years. Well, this tendency towards biological neoteny, which was reinforced by mutagenic influences in the diet, is carried over into culture as a cultural characteristic. And it's, have you noticed that every generation views the generation it spawns as more childish than itself? And we look back to our rugged grandparents who slogged across the plains, and I suppose they look back to people in chainmail who were only 4 feet high, who, you know, could go without eating for 6 months or something. And it just gets, we have become more and more soft, more and more infantile. And the final phase of this was just the decision that we never needed to grow up at all. We never needed to find out about the nature of our relationship to being at all. And so the psychedelics were suppressed. And what you have in the pre-adolescent child is an extreme expression of ego. And this is, you know, the 11-year-old child, let's take as the example, is the supreme egoist. And in a sense, we got hung up at that place because we didn't get hung up in it. We fell into it. We were in balance, but the suppression of psychedelics created the precondition that allowed the generation of ego. And it's very complicated. A lot of factors are at work, you see. The mushroom style, the shamanic style of the nomadic hunter-gatherer is a style of goddess worship and psychedelic shamanism and orgiastic religion. And the shamanism and the religion overlap each other considerably. The style that replaced that was a style of domination, hierarchy, with alpha males, with powerful males controlling females at the center of these hierarchies. And to my mind, the concern that caused the shift was the accumulation in the psyche of these hominids of enough ego that there became concern for the line of male paternity. In other words, men wanted to know who their children were. And that made the orgiastic style of religion in conflict, because that was all about, the children were the children of the group. And sex was a shared activity, even though there might be bonding. But once men got it into their heads that they wanted to know who their offspring were, then females had to be controlled very rigidly, and there had to be control of sexual. And the whole thing just turned into a nightmare. My woman, my property, my children, my food, my territory, so on and so forth. Well, you see, what had been going on before was a true incipient symbiosis. And this is, I think, the new idea that I want to communicate, and that I'm absolutely serious about, and too literal about, that
Esta es la razón por la que he cancelado mi suscripción a la cámara del timbre.
Esta nueva mini cámara Wi-Fi sin suscripción ofrece más funciones de seguridad que los sistemas tradicionales de timbre sin tener que pagar por una instalación costosa o tarifas mensuales, haciendo que las cámaras de timbre típicas queden totalmente obsoletas. Es una mini cámara Wi-Fi y fue creada por ex empleados de una empresa de timbres con sede en Santa Mónica, California. Su innovación revolucionó por completo la industria de la seguridad en el hogar, ya ofreciendo enormes ahorros a propietarios satisfechos que suman miles de dólares. Así que las principales compañías de cámaras de timbre están haciendo su mejor esfuerzo para resistir el cambio. Después de años de trabajar como técnicos para una empresa de cámaras de timbre en Santa Mónica, Evan y Justin aprendieron que los propietarios necesitaban una solución de vigilancia avanzada pero asequible y sin suscripción. Se dieron cuenta de que las cámaras de timbre tradicionales desactualizadas y eran demasiado caras. Fue entonces cuando Evan y Justin decidieron actuar. Con años de experiencia técnica y un sincero deseo de retribuir a la comunidad, desarrollaron una mini cámara Wi-Fi única de conectar y usar que ofrece seguridad y conveniencias superiores. Cuando su antigua empresa ofreció $2.700.000 por los derechos de producción, Evan y Justin rechazaron la oferta. Fue entonces cuando se dieron cuenta del impacto que su invención podría tener. Un grupo de inversores se unió a ellos en su misión de proporcionar seguridad doméstica asequible. Perfeccionaron el dispositivo y lo prepararon para la producción en masa. Es la forma más rentable de mejorar su sistema de seguridad doméstica. A diferencia de las cámaras de timbre tradicionales que son fijas y limitadas en su alcance, esta cámara ofrece increíbles beneficios de seguridad. Graba a resoluciones más altas y cuenta con características como visión nocturna, LED mejorada, ángulo de visión amplio de 130 grados, transmisión en vivo remota, comunicación de audio bidireccional.
Glory and our uniqueness and why we are as we are is because we are a plant-animal symbiotic species. Our ordinary state, our state of nature, the way in which we existed until 10,000 years ago, was in a very tightly bound symbiotic relationship with plants. They were, we domesticated them, and we spread them, and we created environments for them through the use of burning. And in return for this mysterious connection opened up where real information couched in humanly cognizable terms, information about where the reindeer went, who you should marry, what the weather's gonna do, stuff like that. Real information began to be traded back and forth. Now, biologists are familiar with the notion of pheromones, message-bearing chemicals that regulate behavior within a species. But we're just getting ready to go to the next level and recognize the possibility of what have been called exopheromones, pheromones that regulate behavior between species. And it's very clear that, in climaxed ecosystems of great age, such as the equatorial tropics of this planet, exopheromonal interactions become the major mediating force in all the evolutionary exchanges going on. The old notion of competition and survival of the fittest is now seen to be bankrupt. The way nature works is it's the species that can make itself most necessary to other species, the one that can cut energy deals with the most of its neighbors, that is the successful one. So you maximize cooperation, you maximize dependency, you maximize integration. This is the successful evolutionary strategy. I mean, of course you can be a jaguar and crash around in the forest and eat things immediately smaller than you, but jaguars will be a memory in the fossil record of this planet when the plants will still exist, given that man were not part of the picture. So the dynamic of life dictates that these energy levels be held very close.
How do you explain the ego and the identity of the object? Is that outside of the natural?
Well, no, I think nothing is outside of the natural, but all of this can be explained in terms of climatological flux on the African continent. Very briefly,
La canalización espiritual es el proceso de acceder a información y energía que no está limitada por nuestras nociones convencionales de tiempo y espacio.
Todo está aquí y ahora, todo está conectado, puede accederse a ello desde todas partes, en cualquier momento. Es la idea de que toda la información nunca desaparece.
Mucha gente que funciona como canalizadores reportan la experiencia de recibir información de otra inteligencia. Y a veces le dan un nombre a esa otra inteligencia.
El primero que habló a través de mí fue Orlos y dijo, te estoy preparando para maestros superiores. Y luego cuando vino Tío Orlos dijo, los maestros superiores ya están aquí.
La canalización espiritual es una forma de chamanismo espiritual.
Hay todo un espectro de formas distintas de canalización espiritual.
Uno se convierte en un conducto abierto para recibir información sutil. Se convierte en un medio a través del cual fluye la información. Uno se convierte en ese canal.
El corazón es el espacio sagrado del ser humano.
No me lo logré. Saqué las camillas, mierdas de de abajo de mi silla. Tú sabes el logro para... Es una pequeña limpieza para mí. Una gran limpieza para la raza humana.
Our lessons are designed to feel like real-life conversations you would have with a friend, a coworker, or even a native speaker you just met. Best of all, our speech recognition technology gives you real-time feedback so you know if you're on the right track. It's like having a language coach 24/7. You'll speak with confidence from day one.
You know, the primates evolved in Africa. Out of the primates came the hominids, which were these gray seal, upright, opposable thumb, binocular vision, and there were a number of these, and they existed for, over the past 6 million years. But Africa and the planet, because of repeated glaciation, is subject to cycles of drying. And every time the ice moved south, primate populations were bottled up in Africa. And we know there have been 4 glaciations. Immediately the last one, the ice melted 20,000 years ago. And out of Africa, that last time, came pastoralists, people who had domesticated cattle and had a style of following cattle around rather than being just strictly hunter-gatherers. Well, I maintain what happened was these arboreal, tree canopy living apes came under pressure as the continent dried up to expand their diet because the forests were disappearing and being replaced by grassland. Well, most animal species eat only 1 or 2 kinds of food. This is a general rule in nature, and it's in order to hold down exposure to mutagenic influence. But when an animal population is in a situation of food scarcity, the logical thing to do is to begin to test food sources and to expand your repertoire of food. Well, that's what these primates coming out of the trees did. Number one, they began eating meat, which gave them a real interest that they had never had before in these ungulate mammals that were evolving in the grasslands. And they began to test all kinds of other foods in the environment. Well, when you do that, you are exposing your population to mutation. And mutation rates soar. And it was during this period that the human brain size doubled in like 1.5 million years. Someone said it was the most rapid evolutionary expansion of a major organ ever seen in the fossil record. Nothing like it ever happened. Why? What was making this happen? Well, it looks like probably huge numbers of mutations were taking place in this population because people were literally eating anything they could get their hands on. And in this environment of the grasslands, the mushrooms were growing on the dung of these ungulate animals. Well, now a weird thing about psilocybin is that in very low doses so low that you don't feel anything, your vision improves. They've done tests with this, and there is an improvement in visual acuity on psilocybin at low doses. Well, you can can imagine the evolutionary impact of something like this on a hunting-gathering population where visual acuity is all that stands between you and grim starvation. It means a population of animals, a population of these evolving hominids that accept the mushroom into their diet, have just been given a tremendous leg up on nearby competing troops, the competing troops that don't have. It's like chemical binoculars. So immediately then there is a reason, an evolutionary reason for mushrooms to be eaten and for the spread, for mushrooms to be accepted into the diet as an item and so forth and so on. Well, so then you take slightly more mushrooms, and like all alkaloids, and it's a CNS arousal. It means you feel alert, you feel interested, you want to boogie, and also if you're male, you can sustain an erection. So arousal means arousal. So then this stuff is an enzyme promoting sexual activity at that level. Well, sexual activity, the number of copulations that occur in a population is directly related to the number of successful impregnations. So suddenly you have these horny primates, a lot of more interest in sexual contact and partners and all that. This means that these psilocybin-using creatures that are now more successful at hunting and more interested in sex have all kinds of pressures on them that will force them to outbreed the dull, uninteresting forms at this point. Well, so then yet higher doses, it changes, and it's no longer about sexual activity or clarity of vision. It becomes about the psychedelic trip, this tremendum, which is as awesome to you and me as it was to these so-called primitive folks 20,000 years ago. We don't know what to make of it. They didn't know what to make of it. They founded a religion about it. We're trying to start the engine of the same religion all over again. And the way in which this religious ecstasis manifests itself is in language activity, in cognition, but in glossolalia, in spontaneous outbursts of syntactically organized vocal activity. Well, the great mystery of human emergence, of course, is language. What is it? Where did it come from? How did it ever get going on such a scale, so forth and so on? But it looks to me like what we're seeing in psilocybin is a kind of neurological enzyme, a catalyst in the environment that could take an evolving primate population and put it through a series of forced changes that produce ultimately a self-reflected, minded creature practicing a shamanic mother goddess religion in this nomadic context. And that was paradise, and that was the ideal for the archaic revival. In other words, that Eden actually existed, that we are made for better things than what we've got. You know, it says in Finnegan's Wake, here in Moycane was the red light district. Moycane would flop on the sunny side, but up in the end,
So behind that log are Snowflake and Icicle. Behind that teapot, Clamida, Durazo, and the two cycads.
I think we had something, an unimaginably precious gift. We had consciousness and dynamic order. Consciousness as we experience.
But I managed it though.
Confines of history.
Cleaned up all the little shits, rearranged the bath boxes, and now it doesn't smell like poo. Here we go. Clever little shits. That would be Snowflake and Icicle. Sleet is a sleepy baby.
sells anything online, then you know you need to establish yourself as an authority first. Now, more credibility doesn't come cheap, but the easiest way to do it is to create an ebook and publish that. And I can show you how to do that literally in 2 minutes. All you need is one idea.
Oh, God, this commercial plays so much.
Content. So in design,
Even if we're not
Yeah.
aesthetically attracted to that, we have to make a value judgment because it was
10, 12,
not
trompetas, AMLO, Forajida, Amun-Ra,
if that's how it was.
Turbo Abuela.
And
it looks like mantequilla. And inside the box, I think it's go take a look.
Created those grasslands, created those pressures on diet, that created that mother goddess religion.
Mira, Durazo,
Process continued, and the grasslands dried up,
Icicle,
and the winds began to blow, and
Snowflake.
the holes got further,
Icicle and Snowflake are going to be adopted very soon.
and the
They need to be.
mushroom festivals went from
They need
every
good homes.
Saturday night to the first
And over here we have Urukai, Ikramskat, Turbo Abuela, Urukai, Mantequilla, of course, and Hamtaro. Just chilling out. And over here we have Maui 12. Oh my God. They left my Trompetas, AMLO, Amun-Ra, and Forajides. And over there we got Millet and Perro, probably. Perro was sleeping up there. Sleeping good.
lying children, all of this stuff. And at that point, you get the appearance of historical civilization. You have kingship, ship, the age of
And they are based more or less on how many shrooms you took, I suppose.
Gilgamesh spurned the goddess, and the goddess sent
Now these two little shits are gonna be
which
wanting to shit over there.
symbolic of the mystery of the mushroom, the
We're not gonna let him.
horned animal, the crypto symbol of the goddess sends him, and he
So big guys.
rejects the bull, he rejects the goddess.
One of his best
rejects the bull,
lectures, by the way.
and
I've heard it a few times,
the shaman figure
and I'm pretty sold on it.
forces him to
Damn good,
lead him into the world.
damn good analysis of stuff. Evita Perón. She needs to be, operated. She's already had a few kids. La Güera, same thing. No, La Güera ya estuvo, ¿no? Ya operamos a La Güera, ¿verdad? Ah. Ah.
¿Qué dice? Ese güey le gusta dormir solo.
¿Al 12?
13.
¿13?
Y los otros
Es
están
el
todos allá
13, es
metidos.
el 13, güey.
¿Eh?
El 13 no es como los otros gatos.
No.
Y es cabrones. Bueno, esta banda es la que nos vamos a quedar una semana o dos más. Porque son los más chipiris, más chiquititos, más. Y los que están arriba haciendo desmadre son los que vamos a llevar. Entonces, hay que tomarnos. Bueno, ya sé quiénes son. Ya sé quiénes son, más bien dicho.
¿En qué control eso soy yo?
No exactamente, pero sí. Pero no.
Despertaste al 13.
Sí, ya sé, me voy a bañar.
Vaya, ándale.
¿Alguna última palabra para este en vivo?
13.
13. Bye.
Duérmete otro rato si te vas a
caramba.
dormir, cabrón.
Robert One, saludos Robin, me alegra. Gracias Robert. Aquí Mauricio y yo. Despidiéndonos, bye.
Comiéndome un elote.